Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Augenbraun, and I am a government liaison in the Pre-Aliyah division at Nefesh B'Nefesh. Our topic today is everything you need to know about making Aliyah from within Israel. You might ask, who makes Aliyah from within Israel? There are many different people who make Aliyah from within Israel. Some people have lived here for many years, for example, on a student visa or possibly an A1 visa, and they've decided that it's time to get a Teudat Zehut number and make their life in Israel a little bit easier, which certainly it is with the Teudat Zehut number. Many people who make Aliyah from within Israel are people who explored living here for a year or two on an A1 visa or often on a work visa, and they've decided to make Israel their home. So this is meant for people who are already living in Israel. And of course, you will need all of your documents, and that's the topic of our discussion today, is all the process and the documents that you will need to make Aliyah from within Israel. Just to clarify, we're mostly tonight speaking about pure Olim, meaning people who don't have any kind of Israeli background. If you do have some Israeli background, such as one of your parents was Israeli when you were born, or perhaps you lived here and were a citizen as a child but left as a minor, your status is a little bit different. And that's definitely something that you should seek our advice and speak to your Aliyah advisor about, how that differs from the process we're going to discuss tonight. When you make Aliyah from within Israel, you're making Aliyah through Mishrad HaPnim, the Ministry of Interior. That is a government body that is going to be approving your Aliyah and with whom you're going to be meeting to finalize your Aliyah. What Nefesh B'Nefesh does is we act as a bureaucratic buffer between you and Mishrad HaPnim. So we collect all of your documents, we advise you and guide you as to all of the things you will need depending on your individual case. We then pass those files over to Mishrad HaPnim for review. And if they have questions, they'll ask us and then we will ask you. So you don't really need to deal directly with Mishrad HaPnim, the Ministry of Interior, until the actual day of your meeting when you will finalize your Aliyah. Okay, so let's discuss the process. The process of making Aliyah from within Israel is that first you're going to go to our website and hit where it says apply at the top, and you're going to fill out an application for Aliyah from within Israel. As soon as you do that, within a couple of days of doing that, you will be assigned a personal Aliyah advisor, and you will get a confirmation email that your application was received and with your Aliyah advisor's email and phone number so that you can reach out to them. In any case, they will be reaching out to you within a few days of your application being logged into our system. Then you're going to gather all of the required documents and submit them to Nefesh B'Nefesh. We're going to go into each individual document in time of Corona / post-Corona, depending where you are in the world. Gathering the documents can take some time. So it's something to think about, even if you're considering making Aliyah from within Israel. If there might be documents that you would want to apply for just to have in case you do decide that you want to do it. Once your file is complete and we have all of your documents, we submit your file to Mishrad HaPnim for review. Approximately 5 to 8 weeks later, we have what we call Guided Day in various Mishrad HaPnims in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, and a few Olim come together, usually between 15 to 30 Olim, make Aliyah in one day. Nefesh staff is there, and we guide you through the process. We also have, well, we hope to have, now that Corona is fading a little bit in Israel, post-Aliyah advisors with us who will also advise you on everything that comes afterwards. On that day, you will receive a Teudat Zehut, and when you leave Mishrad HaPnim, you will be officially Israeli. Mazal tov. Okay, the documents that you're going to need for Aliyah are the following, and I'm going to go into detail of each document as we go through this session. You will need a current passport. You will need a birth certificate with an apostille or a consular stamp. You will need all current and past marital status certificates with apostilles. You will need a proof of Judaism letter, a name change with apostille if that's applicable to you, if you had a name change at some point in your life, a criminal background check with apostille. There are also 6 pages of Mishrad HaPnim paperwork, and you will need 4 passport-sized pictures. That was that is for your temporary Teudat Zehut that you will receive on the day. Your passport needs to be valid for 6 months from your date of Aliyah, and there does need to be an empty page in your passport for the Aliyah visa to be put on. Mishrad HaPnim will ask to see all passports. So if you have more than one passport, if you have any other passport other than your US or Canadian passport from any other country, Mishrad HaPnim will ask to see it. Your other passport does not necessarily need to be current. It can be expired. However, Mishrad HaPnim will want to see all passports. Your birth certificate. You will be required to have a birth certificate from the country in which you were born with an apostille. What is an apostille? An apostille, the countries that belong to the Hague Convention have an agreement that when one country uses an official document from another country, the originating country authenticates it so that the country that's accepting it knows that it has been validated by that government. That authentication is called an apostille. It's a separate piece of paper that's stapled onto the document with this interestingly weird kind of staple, which you should not try to undo. And it says apostille on the page. Some countries, for example, Canada, do not have apostilles. And in that case, if there are no apostilles in the country in which you were born, you will need to get your birth certificate validated by the Israeli consulate in that country. So for example, if you were born in Canada and you come from Toronto, the Israeli consulate in Toronto will need to validate your birth certificate. They put on a piece of paper with a red ribbon and everything that shows that they have validated the document. The birth certificate must be a long form, meaning it must have your full name as well as your parents' full names. It's not enough to just have your parents' last names. We just had a case like that recently where the mother's name was just her last name. Mishrad HaPnim did not accept it. We need to have a birth certificate that lists both of your parents' full names. And as well, if your birth certificate is not in English, if you were born, if your parents were, let's say, in France for a few years for business or schooling or something, and you were born there, and your birth certificate is not in English, you will need a notarized translation of your birth certificate and apostille from an Israeli notarized translator. Please keep in mind that if you were born in a foreign country and you're a US citizen, you will have something that's called a consular report of birth abroad, which the United States consulate gives to you when you're born in a foreign country to report that a US citizen was born in that country. That is not a birth certificate. You will actually need the birth certificate from the country. For example, France, if you were born there, you will need the actual birth certificate from France. You're required to present your marriage certificate with an apostille, as we discussed before. Apostille, same idea. If you're divorced, a divorce certificate with an apostille. And if you are widowed, if you're a widow or a widower, the death certificate of your spouse with an apostille, as well as the marriage certificate that shows that you were married to that person. In the case of multiple marriages, divorces, or deaths, if you were widowed and remarried, or divorced and remarried, Mishrad HaPnim will require all past marriage, divorce, or death certificates in order to see the name changes throughout the years, especially in the case of women, but they require it for everyone, all the previous marriage status certificates. Proof of Judaism letter. In order to make Aliyah, you need to be eligible under the law of return. The law of return says that anyone who has a Jewish mother, a Jewish father, or a Jewish grandparent is eligible to make Aliyah. So if you have a Jewish mother, you need to get a letter that needs to be on synagogue or temple letterhead with the rabbi's name on the letterhead. It needs to be signed by the rabbi in pen, not digitally, as I haven't mentioned yet, but when you do go to Mishrad HaPnim to complete your Aliyah, they will ask to see originals of all the copies of the documents that we presented to them. When you send in everything to Nefesh B'Nefesh for your application, you'll be sending in copies. When you sit with Mishrad Apnim, you will need to present originals of all of those documents. So the letter must be signed in pen. And in the case of a Jewish mother, the body of the letter needs to say that the rabbi knows you, and he or she should use the name on your passport, not your nickname, not your Hebrew name, the full name on your passport, that he or she knows you to be Jewish and born to a Jewish mother. In the case of you being born to a Jewish father, the letter should say that he or she knows you to be born to a Jewish father, and that to their knowledge, neither you nor your father have ever practiced another religion. Sometimes in the case of a father or a grandparent, Mishrad Apnim might ask for other documents. They might ask sometimes for birth certificates. If it's a grandparent, they may ask for your father's birth certificate. They may ask for marriage certificates of the grandparent or of your parents if it's your father. They may ask for different things if it's not a Jewish mother, just to make sure that in fact no other religion was practiced in the family. The proof of Judaism letter should be dated within a year of your Aliyah. If you have converted, there are several documents that you will need. And if you are considering Aliyah, even down the road, you should definitely start gathering these documents, because sometimes they do take a while to obtain. You will need, of course, your conversion certificate, the original conversion certificate, to present to Mishrad Apnim. You will need an official syllabus of what you studied for conversion, with whom you studied, including dates and topics that you studied, and it should preferably be signed or issued by the person or the body with whom you studied. If it was a course, a synagogue, a rabbi, it should be issued officially from them. You will need a letter of community participation for 9 months post-conversion. It's preferable that your community participation is in the community in which you converted. Sometimes it happens that it's not, and we can usually deal with that, but you will need a letter for a minimum of 9 months of community participation after your conversion, that you participated in Jewish life, went to synagogue, etc. And that needs to be from preferably the rabbi where you converted or the community in which you were participating. Also required to write a personal statement as to why you converted. This doesn't need to be an essay. It could just be a paragraph or two as to why you made the decision to convert. If you converted as a child, as a young child, there's no syllabus needed. You will just need a regular proof of Judaism letter, whereby the rabbi acknowledges that they're aware that you converted and that you have been since the conversion, been living with this Jewish family and participating in Jewish life, whether it's synagogue, school, etc. Name change. If your name on your birth certificate does not match the name on your passport, this becomes a problem for Mishrad Apnim. That's a very important aspect of Aliyah, is that the name on your birth certificate exactly matched the name on your passport. So if there is a name change, if you dropped the name, if you changed your name, hopefully you have a name change certificate that will require an apostille. If your last name is different due to marriage, you do not need a name change certificate. Obviously, you're presenting the marriage certificate, and that will be enough to document that name change. Many times there are people who have changes that are undocumented. Sometimes it's people who were born immediately post-Holocaust, or sometimes, I know in the United States, if you go to renew your passport and you say, oh, I don't like that middle name, let's just drop it and just keep the first name. Sometimes they can just say, okay, sure, and then your name doesn't match. We can deal with it depending on what it is. We can present the case to Mishrad Apnim. If you have any evidence that shows that you're the same person, sometimes naturalization papers, social security card, things like that could help. But if you do have undocumented changes, please make sure to speak to your Aliyah advisor about it from the beginning so that we can figure out how we need to deal with it with Mishrad Apnim and if we can deal with it with Mishrad Apnim. Excuse me. Okay, criminal background check. During Corona, they did tighten up the regulations a little bit about criminal background checks. So if you were familiar with some of these rules from before, they are a little bit different now. Everyone is required to have a criminal background check from every country that they have lived in over the age of 14 for 1 year. This is for 1 year or more. This, of course, is regardless of whether you were citizen or not. If you went abroad to Italy for a few years for work and you lived there, even though you were not a citizen, you will need to bring a criminal background check from Italy with an apostille. Every background check needs to have an apostille, as we spoke about before, the authentication, or in countries where there is no apostille, you will need an Israeli consular stamp from that country. If the background check is from a non-English speaking country and the background check is not in English, again, it will need to be translated by a notarized Israeli translator. Sometimes people have had it translated by a consulate in another country or by a private translator outside of Israel, and that's not acceptable to Mishrad HaPnim. They only want translations done by an Israeli certified notarized translator. That's a very important thing to remember because it does cost some money to get these things translated. It would be a shame for someone to have to do it more than once. Every background check, this is a bit different from when you make Aliyah from the States. Background check from within Israel is good for 3 months. So if you got a background check and then after 3 months, you went on a vacation and then you came back and then you want to make Aliyah, you will need to get a new background check. If you got a background check and you did not leave Israel, in other words, up to a year, if you did not leave the country, especially because of Corona, Mishrad HaPnim is accepting background checks that go back about a year, as long as you did not leave the country. And they can see, of course, they run your passport and they can see in a minute whether you've left the country or not. So that's an important thing to know. If you've lived in Israel prior to age 14 and you've never lived outside of Israel for more than a year in any other country after age 14, then you are able to sign a lawyer's declaration. This is a preset form, which your Aliyah advisor will be able to provide you with. But however, you will need to provide proof that you did not live outside of Israel. So high school records, job or school records, or possibly tax records, something to prove that you did not live outside of Israel from age 14 until whatever age you are at the time that you make Aliyah. In terms of the FBI background check, which is what most of our Olim need, because most of our Olim are from the United States, and Nefesh B'Nefesh does assist with this. We work with the channeling company. We take your fingerprints and we send it for an apostille. We take your fingerprints, the channeling company receives it, they issue the FBI report, then it's sent for an apostille. The cost of this is 700 shekel, and currently the turnaround time is 10 to 12 weeks to get an apostille. It's actually getting better. I'm very excited because it was standing at 12 to 16 weeks in the height of Corona. Now that things are opening up a bit more in the States and they're dealing with the backlog, we're at 10 to 12 weeks, and hopefully that time will become less and less as time goes on. Pre-Corona, it was a much shorter turnaround time. So I think it will take a while to get back there, but you should keep in mind the turnaround time so that if you think you want to make Aliyah in 3 or 4 months and you're not going to be leaving the country, the first thing you should do is the FBI report so that when you're ready to make Aliyah, we do have your FBI report and apostille in hand. Just to let you know, there is a company that can do this a little bit quicker, and that's something you should speak to your Aliyah advisor about. If you need to get this done faster, there is a company that we work with that there is a method that you can get your FBI prints and a report done a little bit quicker. Because of Corona, of course, there are specific conditions about how we can take fingerprints. So the best thing to do is contact us to set an appointment. You can speak to your Aliyah advisor, or you can call our main number, and somebody who answers at reception will be able to help you set up an appointment for fingerprinting. Mishrad Apnim paperwork. There are 6 pages of paperwork that need to be filled out. You can fill it out either in Hebrew or English. It needs to be filled out for each person over the age of 16. And then there are 2 pages that need to be filled out for every minor child making Aliyah, anyone under the age of 16. I cannot stress enough that when you are gathering your documents, Mishrad Apnim is going to require originals of all documents. They are going to want to see your original birth certificate with apostille, your original marriage certificate or divorce certificate or death certificate with apostille, your original background checks, your original proof of Judaism letter with the rabbi's signature in pen. So please make sure if someone is helping you in the States gather these documents or get the apostilles, that they don't just send you a scan, but they send you the actual document. If you do not have your originals with you, we will not be able to set up a meeting for you with Mishrad Apnim. So please remember that your originals are really important for your meeting with Mishrad Apnim. And lastly, you will need 4 pictures for each person over the age of 16. That is for your temporary Teudat Zehut. When you make Aliyah on guided day, what you will get is you will get your temporary Teudat Zehut, and that will enable you to do all of the things that come after Aliyah, such as going to Mishrad HaKlita, opening a bank account, all the things that our post-Aliyah advisors will advise you on. And by the way, if you'd like to read up on the benefits of Aliyah before you get started, certainly you can go to our website. You can just type into the Aliyahpedia, Aliyah benefits, and there are many articles about the different benefits and the timeline on the benefits and all of that information. Again, at Guided Day, there will be someone who will go over these benefits with you. The other thing that you're going to get on the day of your Aliyah, besides your temporary Teudat Zehut, is they're going to take your picture for your biometric Teudat Zehut, which is what everyone in Israel gets now. You must have a biometric Teudat Zehut now. It is the law. It takes 2 to 4 weeks until you will receive your biometric Teudat Zehut. It's actually delivered by a messenger to your house. So that's what you'll get on Guided Day. Of course, you'll get the presence of our friendly and helpful Nefesh staff who can answer any and all of your questions. And once you send in your application, as I said, you will be assigned a personal Aliyah advisor, and they will be able to answer all of your questions, guide you through the process. Of course, many of you may have cases that are a little bit outside the box of what we've discussed here, and those are questions that you should definitely ask your Aliyah advisor, because we do have answers to almost all of these questions. And we're very excited that you're thinking of making Aliyah from within Israel. We'd be thrilled to see you at a Guided Day. We're hoping that our Guided Days are going to go back somewhat on the road to going back to pre-corona, where we have a photographer and we have some barekas, and it's kind of a fun day for all of the Olim and the Nefesh staff. During corona, it was much more subdued. It was only a few people at a time. There were months where we didn't even have that day at all because Mishrad Apnim was closed. So we are excited to get back to something of what our traditional Guided Days are like. And we hope to see you there very soon. We hope to see you there very soon, where you can become officially Israeli. And of course, we're always here to answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a nice day.